All right, testing, testing, testing. Let's go. I thought I knew exactly what I wanted. I even had a name for it. I was wrong. Before I knew what it was called, I already knew what it felt like. I have always been like that. With art, with games, with people. The feeling arrives first. The words come much later. It has taken me a lifetime to learn the difference between the two. I grew up drawing on everything. Notebooks, school pads, whatever was in front of me. And people noticed early. Teachers, family, friends. The praise was real, and I accepted it. But even then, even as a kid, there was something quietly uncomfortable about it. Because I already knew what good looked like. I had Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci in my head, Nintendo box art, and Mad magazines. Things I couldn't name yet, but could feel completely. And whatever was coming out of my pencil wasn't that. I loved doing it, but I knew. So the praise never fully landed. And not because I wasn't grateful, but because I could already see further than where I was. I just didn't know what to do with that yet. There was always one thing connecting all of it. Every single piece, classical or commercial. Oil on canvas, or an airbrush on a trapper keeper. There was a person behind it. A human being who sat down and made something that felt incomprehensible. I remember holding the Splatterhouse 2 cartridge for the Sega Genesis. That mask, those monsters, all that chaos, and I couldn't stop looking at it. Or Ryu's animation in Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, the arcade intro. It looked so fluid, how Ryu's gi separated from his shoulders and his bounce was natural. And me just standing there with no coins. Mom somewhere nearby. No time. But still not being able to look away. And later as a teen, standing in front of La Pietà in the Vatican, being there in person and feeling genuine disbelief. You would think it was because he was world famous, but in reality, I just couldn't do the math on how stone could look so smooth and malleable. The way the Virgin Mary's hands pushed Jesus' flesh. That was marble. Marble. Someone did that with their hands. Every single one of those moments had these questions that kept hitting me in the back of my mind. How did a person do this? What were they thinking? What did it cost them? And I know I'm not alone here, but these questions feel endless and have followed me my entire life. What would eventually come to surprise me is that one day I'd be trying to answer them about myself. Those questions really became alive during the Warcraft days. More playing than drawing, more living than building anything. My 2 closest friends and I would chase all-night sessions in the cybers, madrugonazos, from 9 p.m. until the sun came up, challenging anyone who showed up for a 1v1 or 2v2 or even 3v3. Even though the majority of the room was always on Tibia or Need for Speed or some other NPC nonsense. Skateboarding during the day, Warcraft all night with the tight crew. Nothing else came close. And on the streets, there was graffiti everywhere. One of my closest friends was deep in it. A real bomber, always in hot water. We shared the same school benches and the same Warcraft nights, but our worlds split there. I loved watching the real graffiti artists. I have a book right now from Saturno, Lights and Shadows. I even helped the Kickstarter. It's incredible. But bombing, the risk was impressive. The art, less so. Skateboarding and Warcraft already owned my time, so I kept observing from the outside, which is its own kind of relationship with something. The art future was already decided by then. I just hadn't figured out yet what form it would take. And that's when I really looked at the Warcraft 3 box, and not as a game, as a painting. The orc in Reign of Chaos, and then Arthas on the Frozen Throne expansion. Something was different about them. I couldn't pinpoint it. Not airbrush, not paint. It was too clean for one and too loose for the other. It didn't fit anything I already had a name for, and I couldn't stop looking at it. In my mind, Samwise made all of it. Basically, the first artist's name I learned inside the games industry. Everything cool with a Blizzard stamp on it. That was him. I didn't research the credits. I just needed a face for the obsession. It was only later I found out about Peter Lee and Joji Shinkawa and 100 others who are now pillars of mine. Monster artists. And I mean that as the highest compliment. And finding them didn't shrink anything. On the contrary, it made the world bigger. More proof that what I felt was real. And earned. The Blizzard website had a gallery. It wasn't hundreds of images, just a regular gallery. But I knew every single one, every millimeter. Illidan with Cenarius, the Warden, the Chen mini teaser. I'd scroll through the same ones over and over, and it was never boring. Because I wasn't consuming them. I was studying them. One of them really clocked me when I saw it. A fire bat, Samwise signature on the bottom, and a 97 beside it. I remember stopping at that one and thinking, this is a signed piece, but it's a functional one. I know that's a character in StarCraft, and that's the first time it clicked. This was a career. He's doing this as a job. A whole life spent making things like this isn't just talent. This was dedication with a timestamp on it. I printed some of them out too. Sat down and tried to copy them by hand many times, trying to understand through my fingers what I couldn't yet understand through my eyes. I remember telling my wife while feeling a bit frustrated one time, I want to draw like this. And she looked at it and she said, Jonathan, you might be pushing something that just isn't there yet. Maybe it's pulling you back instead of pushing you forward. And I remember feeling, she's completely right. Not because she said it harshly. She didn't. It was just an observation from someone who actually saw me clearly. And the strange thing is, I didn't stop. I just started listening differently to what the work was actually telling me versus what I wanted it to say. That shift changed how I practiced. Not chasing someone else's level anymore, just trying to understand what my own hands could actually do. The first tablet I ever owned was tiny, 8x4 if I'm remembering right. My fist would touch the boundaries of the active area. but I still remember the first time I moved the cursor while holding something that felt like a pencil. That was enough. I did a matte painting that semester. Digital oils in Painter. I still like it when I look at it today. The tablet ended up malfunctioning eventually. Cheap things usually do. But it lived through an entire semester. And by then, I already knew what I wanted next. The Wacom Intuos 3, the biggest one they made. 18 inches of smooth gray surface. When it arrived and I saw the size in person, felt the surface under my hand, I couldn't believe it was mine. And that got me all the way through my bachelor's. But by then, I already knew about the new kid on the block, the Cintiq. And I remember the exact feeling when I understood what it was. Are you telling me I can have the tablet technology on an actual screen? I want it. I want it now. It took a couple of years, but eventually I got one. A Cintiq 21UX version 2, black. My boss at Alpha bought it for me to create all the art for the game. I've always been a good storyteller, especially about the things that I want. He just needed to oblige. 1,024 pressure points. Color accurate. Huge. And I thought, this is it. This is the tool. With this, I'm going to make something I can't believe came from me. And some things did. Not Samwise level, but mine. Completely mine. The last year in the institute, there was a moment. A professor was mapping something on the board about what does the future look like for us after graduation? What are you actually walking toward? He called several of us up and asked some questions. When it was my turn, he said, "Tell me your dream. You can make something up if you want. We just need the exercise." And in 0.5 seconds, I said, "Art director at Blizzard Entertainment." He asked me to spell the company name. I did. He asked me where it was. And I said, "California, United States." And he said, "Well, that's in English." And I said, "I speak English." He looked at me the way people look when they've heard that before, and it usually means something different. He said, "Do you actually speak it? Like, do you understand it and say things?" I said, "No, I speak it, like a gringo does." And he said, "Okay, cool," and moved on. I remember standing there knowing nobody else in that room had just done what I did. Not performing, just already there, in my head at least. Looking back at that guy now, I cringe a bit, but I also kind of love him. Everything around him was hectic. Venezuela, a son already, graduation thesis, and he was sure about that one thing. There's something worth respecting in that. Next to each other, and I told him the truth. I was leaving, going to the United States, trying to build a different future. Before that conversation, I remember feeling fear, and after it, relief and guilt. I didn't arrive empty-handed. I had a game, a published game, concept art, illustration, a project I'd seen through from a storage room in Caracas to something strangers actually downloaded and played. February 1st, 2015. My brother's guest bedroom. I came to South Florida carrying that game in my portfolio like a passport. I knew the doors wouldn't just open, but I thought at least some of them would. Resumes went out, portfolios got reviewed, but the illustration and design work I was chasing, it just didn't land. So I walked to the mall, and I got a job the first day. And then another. And then another. Grill cook, valet, bellman, Uber. For the next 4 or 5 years, that was that. But the artist didn't disappear. He just waited. The way things wait when you don't have the luxury of choosing your own timeline. And then a friend called. Someone I knew from the hotel. She knew my whole story. Knew I could draw like hell. And she said, "There's a position where I'm at, and I think you're the fit." That call changed everything. Not because it was a dream job, but because it was the door back to where I'm supposed to be, designing for a living.
My name is Jonathan Lauria, and I'm the graphic designer here at Starkville Wax USA.
Not at a game company, not yet, but close enough to remember what it felt like to build something. I never became art director at Blizzard Entertainment, and somewhere along the way, I stopped needing to. And not because I gave up, but because I finally understood what I was actually chasing. It was never really the title. It was never really the company. It was that feeling. The one I had looking at the orc on that box. The one I had in that classroom. The one that told me this was built right. I still love Samwise. I still love Blizzard. We've had our ups and downs. But I've made my peace. I know what I have built. And I know what I'm still building. And I know the difference now between a dream that shapes you and the ladder someone else designed. These days, when I scroll Instagram and see another piece that stops me cold, the question still hits, but it's changed. It used to be pure wonder. How did a person do this? Now, it's deeper. I can see the process. I can feel the hours. I can roughly calculate the time, the revisions, the quiet discipline it took. And somehow, that makes the wonder even stronger. Because I understand the cost better. It also sharpens my own edge. I know exactly where my limits sit, and I keep pushing them anyway. Lately though, with AI starting to generate images that almost feel like real passion behind them, it stirs up a whole mix of things I don't even have words for yet. But that's probably another video. The fact is, the kid drawing Gokus and skulls in a napkin is still here. Same curiosity, same hunger, the same need for the feeling to be real before he trusts the words. That never changed, and I don't think it ever will. This is the endless state. Thank you for listening.